Thank you for watching this Last Mile Profits video.
InPost and FedEx, the latest take. Keep watching to find out more.
Last Mile Profits is brought to you by Parcel Pending by Quadient.
Hello, everyone. Once again, with Gary being out in the sticks of Namibia, Gregor has kindly stepped in to support us. So welcome, Gregor. And we are going to talk about something really, really hot. And perhaps you'd like to make the introduction.
Well, when we talk about things hot, it usually revolves around InPost, Marek, and in this video, it's no exception. Of course, we're looking at the recent news. We're just hoping in the time between we record the video and it goes out that we will not be beaten to the post by further news on the proposed offer as it is described in the actual offer itself. That is the takeover offer for the consortium, including FedEx, to take over InPost.
Indeed. So I agree. Let's not talk about, the mechanics, because the one thing that perhaps we should mention, and you picked up on this, Gregor, the change in the supervisory board, which very much reflects the future state with the new potential partners in the company. So representatives from, if I'm not mistaken, from FedEx, stronger representation from InPost itself, or at least somebody closely aligned with Rafael. So I think that the writing's on the wall, all signs that we can see say, yes, this is going to happen. But let's then focus, Gregor, on, okay, what does that mean? And my sort of number one take is this: wow. And what I mean, wow, I really mean wow, because, and I've said this before, so I won't go into all the boring details, but in Europe, you end up having a player with an absolutely unsurpassed network with a few white spots. Now that they're not on the stock exchange, now that they will not be if this happens on the stock exchange, they can afford to do things they couldn't do, like buying Hermes or doing something big in Germany, probably the biggest single white spot, plus leveraging the international connectivity, relationships and footprint that FedEx TNT has pretty much throughout Europe. And this is a really big wow, because the one thing that was, in my opinion, holding InPost back was, the ability to simultaneously have a couple of challenging markets at the same time.
Let's have a think about some of the changes that we could actually see from the consumer side. Obviously, there'll be a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes, a lot of synergies. And we know from the supervisory board that, there's a couple of representatives on there from FedEx, which is not a surprise, given the size of the shareholding that they will have if the deal goes through. Could we start to see things like, if you are a FedEx customer in the US and you want to send some important documents or a parcel to a client in Warsaw, could you have that sent to a parcel locker next to their office, for example? Are we going to start to see FedEx logos, perhaps even on lockers, so that customers know that they can have things delivered to lockers, even if these items are coming from very far afield, from well beyond Europe, where FedEx have global competence?
And I think this was the second point that I hadn't got to, because I focused on InPost, and it's going to allow InPost to be stronger. But then let's look at the second side, where FedEx is incredible, is international cross-border competence, particularly outside Europe. So I think what this can mean in the fullness of time is, number one, much better cross-border opportunities, not just within Europe, but also internationally. Obviously, the big prize is the United States. But at the same time, the US is mega behind in terms of out-of-home development. And who better than the best player in one of the most developed markets, i.e. Europe, to actually disrupt that a bit? So I can actually see two things. I can see, believe it or not, big impact for the US consumer. Of course, if FedEx decides to really make a big bang there, but also for both organizations, but probably this is more a win for InPost, this ability to tap into FedEx's network, which covers most of the important countries worldwide. So, there's lots of levels to this. I would probably, if I was going to classify, Gregor, I'd say there's the pure InPost level, which is going to be better ability to develop in Europe, primarily because they're not on the stock exchange, but also some support from FedEx. Where I think FedEx will be more important for them will be even within Europe, but particularly where you have customs issues and you need a local footprint, the international picture with the US obviously being perhaps the jewel in the crown. Then for FedEx, the flip side, of course, you get the fact that you have a very strong, highly profitable business in Europe, which they haven't succeeded in doing up until now. But at the same time, wow, you have a chance to really do something big in the US out-of-home space. Remember, Gregor, when we looked at our out-of-home report, FedEx already had by far the strongest PUDO network in the US, which is a very, very good starting point to create a PUDO locker business, as, by the way, InPost did in France when they bought Mondial Relay.
And when we look at the strengths of FedEx and we look at the people who are involved in their consortium and their track record, and the fact that InPost is still going to have Rafael at the helm, we're primarily looking at this as a positive development. Once they go private, like you say, they will have flexibility to do things that perhaps could not do if they were public. But again, let's look at things hypothetically from a negative angle. If they were to somehow mess this up under the new look of the company, how could it happen?
Probably the single most risky thing, and they have said they won't do that, would be if FedEx decides to FedExize, that's probably not the right way of saying this, InPost. And according to what I've read in the agreement or the proposed agreement, that's off the cards. But let's be very honest, big US players in our space have not been particularly successful when acquiring and developing businesses like this. FedEx TNT is a famous example, but UPS as well. They bought Kiala. Not many people know this, the first major out-of-home network in Europe, and then killed it. They bought Lynx, which was a really big company in the UK, Stolica, which was a big company in Poland. And now, this could be a topic, by the way, for a video, appear to be moving out of Europe, moving certainly out of B2C, changing the whole model. So I think probably the biggest single risk, Gregor, is that they decide to not leave InPost to be the very agile entrepreneurial organization it is and decide to try to integrate it into the big machine. The second risk I see is cultural, because even if InPost are given a lot of flexibility, they're going to have to find a way that these two organizations, even if they're working maybe not arm's length, they're going to have to work fairly closely together, that they find a culture that will be acceptable. The good news is, from my perspective, if I were to look at the US carriers, I'd say that FedEx was the most entrepreneurial one. So if you look at a company that in terms of DNA is potentially closest to InPost, it will be FedEx. Because UPS is very big, very conservative, big brown, a lot of legacy thinking rules. They've changed it now, but you couldn't even have a beard if you worked for UPS a while back. Whereas FedEx was younger, more agile. So I think, there's a big chance it will work. And I think FedEx, you can say a lot of things, but not that they're not smart. Okay, that's not very good in English, but we understood, hopefully. And I think they've learned. So, let's see. But I'd say those, Gregor, would be the two biggest risks.
So in short, FedEx and InPost on paper looks like a marriage made in heaven. Incredible cross-border and global coverage on behalf of FedEx, plus InPost, who pretty much, as you say, wrote the book on out of home, no parcel lockers, inside out, and how to grow parcel lockers in new markets. However, if they get the balance wrong, and it's a little bit too one-sided in FedEx's favor and FedEx's culture, that could potentially be their Achilles heel.
For what it's worth, the split of the shares means that I think this is unlikely. And you've got Advent, who are super smart guys and have done a very good job with InPost at the beginning. And I think they're a great, shall we say, moderator in the middle. So, let's see where this takes us. But if I were to choose being on the optimistic or pessimistic side, you'd probably guess I'm pretty much an optimist with this one.
Well, I'm just a miserable Scot, so pessimism comes naturally for me, Marek. And on that note, that's it for this episode of Last Mile Profits.
Thank you.
Gary, I was looking at the subscriptions and realized that a huge number of our audience actually don't subscribe to watch our videos.
Really? That's outrageous. It's a bit like watching the BBC without your TV license. How can we keep it free if people aren't subscribing and letting us know they want more of this content? It's ridiculous.
And on top of that, if they're not subscribed, they don't get information about the latest hot episode where you can make one of your witty jokes and we can talk about something that is really important for our industry.
If I knew that a single act like that would make sure I got maximum time taking the mickey out of you, I'd be hitting subscribe in a heartbeat.
Well, look, so here we have it. Please, everyone, if you haven't subscribed yet, this is your opportunity. Click right now. The button should be there, or maybe there. Do it now and have it done.